Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Casual Sports Podcast. Another week in. I'm Alek, Koberna. That's Mike Wolfgang and Matt Morrison. It's November 15th, guys. Thanksgiving just almost a week away. We're going to have some fun times next week. We are going to pre-record one for Thanksgiving Day, but we got shows going all stop. Just so everybody is aware, tuning in right now, Power Hour has been canceled today. Basketball on instead from Cleveland, DJ Yoakley on the call. So tune into that instead at 3 p.m. next year on YSNlive.com after the Casual Sports Podcast. As always, guys, how was the weekend?
Relaxing.
Yeah, all right. That's good.
A little bit of everything. Yeah, relaxing.
Everything.
Had some homework.
Yeah, Penn State gave you guys a headache, didn't they?
Yeah.
That started a month ago. That's nothing new.
We'll get to that on Wednesday's show, Penn State this past week. And we might get to a little college football today. As you see, we got our ticker going across the bottom, everything we're talking about. So let's get into it then. Monday Night Football tonight, 8:20, LA Rams, San Francisco 49ers. Niners not looking too hot so far, but, they've been dealing with a lot of injuries. Trey Lance coming in and out of the starting job. Not sure who the starter is at the moment tonight for the 49ers, but Odell Beckham Jr. making his LA debut after, they get an injury at the wide receiver position earlier this week too.
I'm interested to see their depth now. I mean, we when the signing happened and when they made the Von Miller trade, they, you talk about their depth. That's the Rams' strength, their team, their depth, and they beat you in different ways with all the talent they have at that depth. So I want to see tonight with Robert Woods now out for the season with torn ACL, how Odell adjusts to this, because when he came, he wasn't really – I wouldn't consider him the focal point of this offense, but he might have to be going forward because they lose their option. They still have Cooper Kupp, but it's like somebody's got to pick up the
Van Jefferson is a huge young wide receiver that looked like his spots were going to go away with the Odell acquisition, but now – with their other injury, it's going to put him right back in pretty much the same role he was already in, getting about 4 or 5 looks per game. And also Von Miller expected to make his start tonight with the LA Rams as well, so long as his injury looks good to go at the time of it. So,
yeah,
what are your thoughts?
Go ahead, Matt.
I'm excited to see this, this new look Rams. You get a wide receiver acquisition, with Odell Beckham, and then, you add Von Miller too. I know we have our opinions on, Odell Beckham, but, he's still definitely a productive receiver that could fit well in a system like this with Matthew Stafford at the helm. This goes back with chemistry, and he didn't really have that chemistry with Baker. Alek, you can contest to that a little bit. He did not have chemistry at all. He had chemistry with every other receiver pretty much except Odell Beckham. And, that's not fair to either of those guys.
Right.
So it was time to move on. And, we'll see what happens. And Von Miller, the guy still has gas in the tank. He's not that old, but he's about 30-ish, something like that.
Yeah, he's still got probably 5-6 years left considering his position,
that's,
especially if he was to make a move from
thing.
being an outside linebacker to more of just an edge rusher. I think he could probably extend that career another 2 years past that mark. So Von Miller's still plenty to go here. Jimmy G is a starter. Remember, Kittle now back for his second straight week as well. Deebo Samuel, one of the top wide receivers in the NFL so far this season. They have a lot of weapons, and the defense is playing all right, in my opinion, so far this season. They probably need to be better, and they're going to go up against the top defense again. They're probably going to get burned a lot. I got a feeling the Chargers are going to put up a good amount of points, not Patriots level of points against the Browns this week, but probably some pretty good ones, high 20s, low 30s most likely. I just want to see if the 49ers can keep pace. I expect a 33-23 win for the Los Angeles team. So.
Yeah, and with the Niners, it's been their biggest issue since they made the Super Bowl the last couple of years, right? Not staying healthy. And, like you said, with their defense, it's been okay, but it's not to the level we saw during that Super Bowl run and what we now expect from them with Bosa and the guys they have on their defensive end. I know they lost some guys too, but, with their offense, it's going to have to step up because we talk about what's teams in college and the pros. Your defense can only do so much. You got to make it even between your defense and offense with the workload. So I want to see them get their guys healthy, and I want to see Jimmy G be consistent because with the injuries and his play on the field, he hasn't been consistent. So that's what I want to see tonight from the Niners.
Yeah, consistency is going to be a big thing here. Why don't you guys go ahead and make your picks? I took the LA Rams here. What about you guys?
I got to go Rams, too. Even without Robert Woods, you just added to the, best players of this game, on a certain level. So I got to go Rams. Rams by 2 touchdowns.
So yeah, I'm interested to see the two guys in their debuts tonight with the Rams, but honestly, it's hard to go against the Rams in this one because from what I just said with the Niners,
stacked.
yeah, they're already stacked. Number one, they were before they even got these two guys, but it's like I've talked about with the Niners, it's the consistency with them, and they haven't really been able to do it. And again, I think the Rams are a more complete team, even with the injury to Robert Woods. The one thing I'm worried about, I want to see how Odell steps up with this because now we get to see if he values more winning or if he values more of the stats. Now he's on a winning team. I mean, he was in Cleveland, but he's on a contending team right now. So I want to see how he handles that and how he handles Void tonight. But overall, with this game, I got to go with the Rams.
All right, so we got Rams across the board here. Should be a fun one. The Manning cast. We'll see if they bring back the Manning curse as well. So far, every player that's been on it, the next week they go on and lose. So we'll see if that continues. But next up, we got to talk this one. Washington football team, huge win over the Tom Brady-led Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 29-19. Unfortunately, they do lose their biggest pass rusher in Chase Young for the rest of the season with a torn ACL officially. And, this offense, they weren't fantastic, but, they played just well enough to really get everything done. Heineke probably had what was his best game as a starter, and he always plays like the GOAT against the GOAT. So, 26 of 32, 256 with the touchdown, and Antonio Gibson on the ground puts up 64 yards with 2 touchdowns there. They didn't use him a lot in big spots, but he couldn't really get a lot of big things going. The 2 touchdown runs, close yardage situation. That's what happens. They didn't really find too many deep balls. There's a lot of short passing here, 8 to 10 yard routes, but it worked well against this Buccaneers defense. They really picked them apart, and, they held this Tom Brady team to 2 interceptions, and that's the big thing. If you can pick off Tom Brady, you're going to be in a good spot because he's going to be afraid to throw. If you let him roll on and he doesn't make mistakes, you're going to be in for a long night. In my opinion, Washington did everything right in this game to pull away with the victory. And they started out being the first team to score, and they took a lead in the halftime and they never let it go.
Yeah, I want to start off by saying, I feel bad for Chase Young with the torn ACL. You don't want to see anybody do that. And he is the best player on their defense. But anyway, as far as this game, I was impressed, like you said, Alek, with the Washington football team. It's they got out to like a 10-0 lead, I think it was, and it was 13-3. And then coming out of the half, or to open the second half, Tampa Bay scores a touchdown. It's like, here we go. Tampa Bay's going to take the lead. And Washington didn't let that happen. And again, I know it's been somewhat of a lost season for them, especially on the defensive end and injuries to the quarterback. But yesterday was a good one for them because it's like I said, it shows that like they against good teams like Tampa Bay, like a Super Bowl team like Tampa Bay, that they can withstand those runs that they make. And they were able to find a way to win that game. And they were able to hold them off.
Matt?
Yeah, I mean, Taylor Heineke just came off and said, hey, I mean, I had a shot at you last year, and I talked about this last show here. Like, I mean, this is the rematch, and, Heineke took the rematch. He came out and just played his all. If you want to be the best, you have to beat the best. I'm not saying he's the best now because he beat Brady, but he's on his way to, winning bigger games like this. If you win a big game like this against a Super Bowl contender, you can go out and win even bigger games, So is this maybe a foreshadowing for Taylor Heineke, what we see in the future? Is this the guy? Or, I mean, he hasn't won a lot of games this year, but he's won some big games, and that has to draw some attention from some of the coaches and the guys upstairs. So Ron Rivera knows what he's doing.
Yeah, I mean, they've obviously been okay going with the Heineke train this season. I mean, they haven't looked at all. I mean, Cam Newton was available. They very easily could have signed him, and I don't think many people would have flashed an eyelash. And they stick true to their guns, and they rolled with him. And so far, it's working out. But I think, it's not working out technically with the record, but I feel like they're kind of building something. And he's a good enough guy to sit there while you wait to find that guy, right? He's fine enough to keep you as a serious team and keep guys from wanting to run away to contenders because they feel they have something with this young quarterback. And, he's young. He's still one of the older quarterbacks of the younger generation coming into the league, but he's definitely a bright side for this squad for the future, at least until they can find that guy to take over this squad and really turn them into that contender that we think they really should be on their way to being.
Yeah, and like you said, it takes time. It's decision making too, and it's hard to find the right guy, Alek, and we know that in this sport, especially not that position. And I mean, for right now, it is their guy, but they have to make that decision moving forward, and it's something to look at because Matt, like you said, he's found he's had some success against decent teams, and he had somewhat success in the playoffs last year, and that's kind of why we looked at him the way we did look at him. So, yeah, it's hard to find the one, but they're gonna have to make that decision.
All right, here next game up on the slate here: Titans versus Saints. Titans, they held off a close one here, and they continue to look completely different without Derrick Henry, but they're still a good football team. And I think everything we said before Derrick Henry's injury is still true. They dominate on the ground, but without him, they need some more help there. Dante Freeman and Adrian Peterson obviously aren't the guys you're going to rely on. They know that. But this defense still is one of the best defenses I think we've seen all season, especially with the way they bring the heat. I mean, they have 2 of the top 5 pass rushers in the NFL so far this season. They've been getting the guys left and right. And that was the same situation here. I mean, they held Trevor Siemian to almost 50% passing. So phenomenal game. Their defense didn't really allow any rushing yards. So rushing was pretty, non-existent in this football game. But it was a fun one to watch. Tennessee just edges out the victory. And there wasn't really much offense. This was a very defensive-led battle. So what was your guys' biggest thoughts, takeaways from this game?
I mean, yeah, there wasn't a whole lot of defense, but offense. With the Titans, it's like every win that they have to me from now until whenever the season ends, from when the start of the playoffs or when they get bounced, if they get bounced in the playoffs, is impressive to me because like we talked about when I talked about when they lost Derrick Henry, it's like you lose your identity not only just on the offense but he was pretty much their identity of the whole team. So they've been able to find ways to win, and we talked about the last few wins that they've had. It's been impressive, and I know you're looking at a Saints team that had a lot of guys out, but it's a win like that's impressive to me, and it's a close one, and they found a way to get it done.
Yeah, Matt, what are your thoughts here?
The Titans had been in a tough spot since that injury with Henry, and they bring in Adrian Pearson, 8 carries, 21 yards. I mean, it's not Derrick Henry, but you put Foreman in with him with 11 carries and 30 yards. It's like 2 guys to create the presence of Henry. And, it's working for now. I mean, they're winning games, winning tight games, but, they're doing what they have to do. And the pressure does rest on Tannehill a little bit more because he doesn't have his big back there. So hopefully we'll see more from him. I mean, not the best game, 213 yards. It's not bad, but could have done a little better, I think. Especially, you have AJ Brown. You only threw to him 1 time for 16 yards, but you did have Johnson 5 receptions for 100 yards. But you got to get guys like AJ Brown going. That's one of your top receivers, and you only had 1 reception. So I don't know. We'll see how the season continues for them.
Yeah, and a big thing coming up is the rest of the season. These next 3 games, I like 2 of them for them. I mean, they're going to have the Texans. They'll be at home this weekend, and then they'll have the Patriots after that on the road in Foxborough before hosting the Jaguars. So very winnable 3 games. It's going to depend which Patriots squad really shows up there. After that, though, the tide does kind of turn just a little bit when they have to take on the Steelers and Niners in back-to-back games. Obviously, the Niners aren't what they probably should be. They still have a lot of deep talent on that team, and that's 2 days before Christmas. We'll see how that impacts a lot of people's mindsets going into that weekend. You never know who's going to come in distracted. Especially 49ers crew will be on the road away from family members, 2 days right before Christmas. You never know exactly what you're going to get out of a team when they're on the road. They want to be home. They want to get out of there as quick as possible. They might come in and storm over this thing and get done by the end of the first half. So this Titan squad is going to have to be careful, but they have a lot of winnable games and sit in a pretty good spot right now ahead of the rest of the AFC South with a good chance to clinch it. I mean, the Colts aren't much. The Jaguars and Texans obviously won't lay a challenge, so it should be a pretty easy road for the Titans so long as they don't slip up in the playoffs. Before the playoffs.
Yeah, and like you said, they have winnable games coming up, but it's some of the games that they've had, especially since the Derrick Henry injury, we didn't view them as winnable games, and they found a way to win games and win over the last month or so that they've had with these games. So the concern with me when Henry went down wasn't if they would get. I still view them as a playoff team without him, but it's what they do when they get there. So I guess we'll see when we get to that point.
Yeah, well, Matt, let's head over across the way to your game without the help of Big Ben. The Steelers, man, they were struggling against the Detroit Lions, and They helped the Detroit Lions avoid an 0-17 season. The Lions, though, can still go 0-16-1. Matt, what were your biggest takeaways from Mason Rudolph's 50 pass attempts game?
First of all, Alek, you and I were talking about this before the show. There's no reason that he should be throwing 50 times, okay? 50 times? No. The guys
they let Najee Harris run the ball. I mean, he got 26 carries, but yards. They had way too many offensive possessions that just went nowhere.
Yeah. And it wasn't just on Rudolph, okay? Johnson had a fumble, and Freiermuth had that fumble at the end of the game when they were driving. But I think that when they were in field goal range, they should have just came out and kicked the field goal and be done with it. Okay, don't try and get closer. Okay, you have a backup quarterback. He hasn't played in a while. And the last time he had a good start was the game he got knocked out by Earl Thomas. So this guy has not had a decent game since that game. Okay, and he didn't even play that full game. And I mean, it's been my decision for almost a year now. I mean, I think they should cut Mason Rudolph. Honestly, I think they need to move on. I mean, you have Dwayne Haskins sitting on your bench. The guy's
he hasn't been dressing at all until this past game.
Yeah.
No, there he goes.
And there he goes. What about you,
Mike? Almost 20 minutes
to this one.
It was a sloppy game from both teams. I think we all can agree on that. It's an overtime one. I mean, you're playing without your starting quarterback on the Steelers side, and you're playing a team that's 0-8 they were at the time. So, I mean, the Steelers I expected it to be somewhat of a close game, somewhat of a slow, ugly one, because Steelers are missing their quarterback, and Steelers, like I often say, and Pittsburgh teams in general, do this with bad teams. So, I've heard people on Instagram and other social media platforms say, like, hey, no team deserved to win this game. And I pretty much agree with that, because nobody wanted that in overtime quarter they had there, because they were turning it over. Matt, you said Freiermuth had the fumble, and the weather was ugly at that point in the game. So that was appropriate for it, because neither team really deserved to win it, and no team really did win it.
Yeah, I mean, you end up in the tie there. So, it is what it is. I thought it was just a pretty awful game to watch throughout. I didn't end up seeing this one, but I just looked in afterwards and I go, really, Pittsburgh? And I know a lot of people were saying that the refs in this game were against the Steelers, and it seemed like everybody wanted Detroit to win besides Jared Goff. So, he didn't have too much of a great day. He goes 14-25, 114 yards, nothing else. DeAndre Swift was the bell cow, 130 yards for him. And frankly, I think this is 100% an embarrassing performance for the Pittsburgh Steelers, whether or not, they have their starting quarterback in there or not. You're supposed to have enough guys around Mason Rudolph to be an average quarterback. I mean, you look at Washington with, Taylor Heineke, they can go out there and beat your reigning defending Super Bowl champions with Tom Brady because he has enough around him. They didn't have a great rushing game. They still find ways to win. You went up against the worst team in football history, the Detroit Lions, and you tied them in overtime with the number one defense that I think most people could say they've seen in their lifetimes, unless, you're over the age of 30, and you can't do anything. I mean, allowing this team to get 16 points, points happen. It's going to happen. But you just get into certain situations and you're just like, this is supposed to be the Pittsburgh Steelers, right?
Yeah.
It's supposed to be that team that
hard-nosed football.
Right, with a dominant defense. We know what the offense is. We know it's not great, but they got Najee Harris the ball. They ran it. And even with the backup quarterback, you got Pat Freiermuth. You have endless amounts of wide receivers that, are on and off. Sometimes they're not, the best. But they have had plenty of times this season where they've come out talking, hey, we are those guys. Don't doubt us out. I mean, McLeod and Johnson have really stepped up this season, and now this looks like a team that has completely regressed with Big Ben stepping off the field for one day.
Yeah, and I know TJ Watt went down in that third quarter, okay, and he's suspected to miss some time. They listed him as week to week. So, but, I mean, you have guys on that defense that are more than capable than producing. Without Watt there, you have Alex Highsmith, who's been a force to reckon with. You have Cam Hayward, okay? Cam Hayward is the leader of that defense, okay? And, I mean, there's so many other guys. And one of the guys that has been severely disappointing, Minka Fitzpatrick. You traded to get him, okay? You wasted your first-round pick to get this guy, and it seemed to be pretty good, but the guy has fallen off. He had 2 missed tackles yesterday. I mean, I saw some highlights from it. He's missed 2 missed tackles. He's been the guy to, intercept the ball and take it back to the house a bunch of times. Doesn't even have interceptions this year. That you look for more from guys like that, and they're not getting it. Okay, so that's the problem there with the defense.
And Matt,
their leaders are not producing. Okay,
you talk about the defense and missed tackles. I saw some highlights of Devin Bush. I mean, I don't know what his issue's been, but open field tackle he missed. And to me, though, is with that stuff, him missing tackles.
Guy is recovering,
Yeah, he is, but it's not what Devin Bush is, and it's not what Minka is. You're talking about Minka too, and to me, it really wasn't. But I combine that with that stuff that they missed tackles and stuff like that. Yeah, you got to correct that. But it's like they only held him to 16 points. I know it's a bad offense, but you got to be able to score more than 16 points against a team like that. And that's what I look at with the Steelers.
Minka Fitzpatrick had 2 solo tackles, yesterday. James Pierre, the undrafted rookie, had 4. Okay. And I bet
sometimes, Matt, it is all about positioning, but at the same time, it's inexcusable for him to be as highly rated as he is and not be able to come away from anything. But let's go ahead and move on here to another game that really surprised the NFL world. The Cleveland Browns got absolutely throttled on the road against the New England Patriots, 45-7. This team was rolling hot. Baker Mayfield now out with an injury. I'm not sure if they've updated his status just yet, but this Cleveland team is down bad at the moment. And, I watched this game, and frankly, I'm going to be honest. I had this thing muted by the second quarter. It was pretty awful to watch. I mean, 17 unanswered in the second. I saw the Browns. They went off big. I was like, yeah, let's go. Let's be a game. Fun one. The second quarter came around. It was just like, well, they Brownsed it. They Brownsed it hard, and it was one of those things watching those games. Every time it seems this Brown squad goes down in a game, Kevin Stefanski seems to just completely forget how to call plays. He'll call the same things back to back, even if it didn't work the first time. He goes away from running the football. Dearness Johnson had a great first drive, and, Baker Mayfield ended up throwing a pick on that. But Johnson on the day finished 1 yard shy of 100 yards with only 19 carries. But that entire first half, Stefanski went away from the rushing game. I think by halftime, this guy had about 10 carries, and that was it. And when you're running the ball effectively and you're already getting throttled, it was time that I'm guessing Stefanski felt he had to throw the football or else they were going to be done pretty quick. But at the same time, it was like, this is the one thing we have working. Baker can't find anybody. No one's getting open. He can't hit them. He's under constant duress. And he was getting absolutely destroyed by this defensive side. And you saw it. Baker Mayfield goes out on an injury. Very next play, Case Keenum gets in, and he gets sacked by the same player. The right tackle for the Cleveland Browns last night was just absolutely destroyed. I mean, and frankly, the entire team was destroyed. It was an embarrassing performance, 100%. And, it's going to open up a lot of those questions that I think a lot of people were already asking with the leaving of Odell Beckham Jr. that this team was just a bunch of pretenders. I don't want to say they're a bunch of pretenders because at the end of the day, this is my team. It's the team I'm going to root for and go all the way. And I'm going to mark this off as a bad week, but you can't put multiple bad weeks together. And, they're coming off a fantastic performance against the Bengals the week prior. I want to know what the hell happened from last week to this one that they looked like they should be the Detroit Lions who are 0-6, or pardon me, 0-8-1.
And this is the reason why I picked the Patriots in this game is because of their defense, and it's been playing lights out, and it continued yesterday. But I'm with you, Alek, too. It's with the Browns and the Patriots almost on the same level. They've both been inconsistent. Yeah. You've seen the Patriots drop 40 on a couple weeks ago against, I forget who they were playing, but then they dropped all these points against the Browns. And there's been other games they've had at home. We talked about their inconsistency at home. They haven't been able to win
the Jets.
Yeah, that's the one I was thinking of. And I mean, they come out with all these some of these offensive games just explode, and then sometimes they can't find anything. And I think that's what the Browns do sometimes. They go away from what they're supposed to be doing. And I mean, last week they have that great win against the Bengals, and it got people excited. Like, hey, we got rid of the drama with, the week before that, Odell's gone.
You guys heard me talking about it last week. I was like, all right, cool. This is what we wanted all along. And then crap the bed the next week.
You have a good game, and then you just come out flat in this week. And it was beyond flat. It was more than it was a beatdown. But That's what I think about.
Downhill portion of the Top Thrill Dragster at Cedar Point. They were going straight down, plummeting into the earth.
That's what this game
felt like, and obviously, quite a few injuries. They've been dealing with injuries all season long. But at this point, it feels like every team's dealing with injuries, and it's the same thing we say in basketball, right? We know you're a good team when you play well without your superstar or one of your top players. You have the guys to be able to come in and replace them and still play well. And you saw that with Washington. They're still a decent team even without it. Look how quickly the Patriots have rebuilt their system with Mac Jones. They're now just, half game behind the Buffalo Bills for the AFC East. And that's a shocker that, is coming up here in a few weeks. So the Browns, frankly, no excuse on my end of why they should have lost this game the way they did. A loss is a loss, and you can excuse some of them. At this point, a 45-7 loss is inexcusable, and they're going to have to change something up next week. And I'm guessing they might pull Baker rest of the season now with how tight the AFC North is and the way his injuries are now kind of building up. I wouldn't be surprised if they pull him, especially with the offensive line getting injured. Defense has shown a lot of injuries. Just let Case Keenum roll the rest of the season. Let this guy get healthy, go into his shoulder surgery. I wouldn't be surprised if that happened, but knowing Baker, he's probably not going to want to do that. But I would almost say I'd recommend letting him sit out rest of the season. Just take your lumps at this point, because the AFC North, as much as the Browns are right in the race, it almost feels too competitive for a team that has too many question marks and this many injuries to really compete.
I mean, let's talk about Mac Jones here for a little bit. I mean, yes, he's part of that rebuilding process too. He was the main vocal point of this, I wouldn't even call it rebuilding, this reloading, revamping process for this Patriots team. Look at his receiving. Look at the guys he has. Every guy he on his receiving had at least one reception, okay? Only one guy had one reception. But, a bunch of other guys, like Kendrick Bourne, 4 receptions, 98 yards. Jacoby Myers, 4 receptions, 49 yards. He gets to everybody. Hunter Henry, 4 receptions, 37 yards. This guy can get the ball to everybody, and this is the guy you want as your leader, okay? I know that what they brought in Hoyer for a little bit, but I think what they bring him in because the game was pretty much in the bag.
Right. No reason to keep Mac Jones out there when you're absolutely destroying the other team. So, yeah.
And then look at the rushing. Stevenson, 20 carries, 100 yards. I mean, that's one more carry than Ernest Johnson. But Stevenson, they don't really have a main running back, and maybe he can solidify himself. I mean, the Patriots have been known to bounce running backs, even with Brady. They recently, Sony Michel, they had him. LeGarrette Blount was
right. They don't keep one guy for too long.
Yeah, because they don't have to. They can bring in productive guys as much as they want, or just rotate him and out. It's just about how you play that guy. So,
and Matt, that's how they've
Patriots won. Team.
That's how they've won too. They don't
they won.
They don't really keep too many big name receivers for a long period of time either. And you talk about you were saying with Mac Jones spreading around like that. This is what Mac Jones is, and this is what he did at Alabama. And I'm kind of surprised he's doing it this fast. Like he's showing you that like he belongs where he's at, and he got drafted to the right place. He's comfortable where he's at. And I mean, like I said, I told Alek, I want to see more consistency with the way they score. Like some weeks it's small, some days they explode. But that's what you get with a young quarterback. But he doesn't look like a young quarterback to me.
Yeah,
he looks like Tom Brady.
Yeah, well, guys, we got to move on here into more of the show. We got the NHL, a potential fun game tonight. Detroit Red Wings come across the border to take on the Columbus Blue Jackets tonight. Should be an interesting one. I mean, you get 8-6-2 versus 7-5. So what are your guys' thoughts on these two teams as in the Atlantic Division, Red Wings sit in third, and in the Metropolitan, Blue Jackets third from last?
The Red Wings, I mean, they're finally bouncing back a little bit. 8-6, that's not, I mean, if you look at recent years, the Red Wings have been a horrible team after being a dominating team for a while. I think it was 2010, I think that the last time they won was like 2008, something like that in that area. But they're finally finding rhythm. They're coming back. I like Tyler Bertuzzi. He's one of the leaders of this team. He leads the team in 2 categories. 9 goals, 16 points. I mean, he averages 1 point per game, so that's pretty good. And then you have Moritz Seider, who's doing pretty good, 10 assists. I mean, that's
and Dylan Larkin too,
time
Matt.
and time again. What's that?
And Dylan Larkin too.
Yeah. I've said this time and time again. This game is not about scoring. I mean, it is about scoring, but it's about assisting the guy to score. If you don't have guys that can assist, I mean, this is 10 assists. I mean, this is amazing. So, I mean, that's what you have to build off, guys like that. And then, Columbus, they're not doing too bad either, 7-5. They had a little bit of a bad season last year, but, okay, they're productive pretty much every year, even though I'm not really the fan of the Blue Jackets. I'm a Penguins fan. I'm not supposed to root for the Blue Jackets, but they're a productive team, okay? You have guys like, Voracek that's doing pretty good, 11 assists, and well, they just have to keep building from that. We'll see. This should be a pretty good game here. And Mike, if you want to give a quick,
it should be a pretty good game, Matt. I mean, both teams are coming off some decent stretches here. I mean, the Red Wings they had 3-1 road stretch, I think, and they had a 3-2 overtime victory on Saturday against Montreal. So that's a good win. This team that was in the Cup Finals last year, and Detroit's 4-1 in their last 5 games. So both teams are playing really good hockey. And like you said, I like what Detroit's doing because since that last Stanley Cup they won, they really haven't been anything. And the Blue Jackets have been. I mean, they've been a solid team the last few years. So, and I guess we'll have to see tonight with this because both teams are, like I said, playing some good hockey coming in.
Yeah, and I think the one big thing here with the Blue Jackets is, Matt, I know you say you don't like them, but you always take that underdog, and this feels like one of those underdog teams year in, year out. They're never supposed to be good. They never really feel like they're good, but they always seem to just stick it out long enough. They have lost their last 2 games, but, they were on a 3-game win streak right before that. There's a very up and down team. I'm going to see them get back in the win category. Their defense has been really awful recently. They haven't been able to stop a lot of goals. And with the way Detroit scores, this could become one that gets out of hand very quickly if they can't nullify that offensive onslaught from the Red Wings. I'm going to take my Blue Jackets here. I got to stick with Ohio, but I think it's definitely one that the Red Wings can pull away very quickly. I just hope the defense for the Blue Jackets can stay strong.
And it was 2008 the last time the Red Wings won. I remember that because, they beat Pittsburgh. But
Pittsburgh beat them the next year, though, so we got them back.
Yeah, Pittsburgh beat them the next year, so they got them back. They got their revenge. But this is difficult. I got to go Detroit here. I think Detroit's riding high. I think Detroit's going to take it. I was very close in picking Columbus, though, okay? All right?
I know you like those underdogs. All right, what about you, Mike?
I want to pick Columbus too, but I think I'm going to go with Detroit. Like you said, Alek, I don't know if they can – I mean, they certainly can, but I don't know going in if they can stop the scoring of Detroit. And, I mean, the last couple of games, they put up 5 goals, 4 goals again, 3 goals in their last one. And, I mean, this one's on the road. I think Columbus needs it, but I think Detroit's going to take it.
Detroit's got nothing going on in that city except hockey.
That's for sure. Hey, man, they tied the Steelers. Take down Pittsburgh and Columbus in the same week. World's going crazy.
Free agency, too. The Tigers signed some good guys, so they might be coming up on the way.
Oh, jeez.
All right, let's move on here. NBA tonight, the Denver Nuggets take on the Dallas Mavericks in a battle for third place early here in the season for the Western Conference. These two teams are both coming in hot. Dallas has obviously been, a team that it feels very confusing. They win the games they're supposed to win, but then the tight ones, they don't come out on top. This is a very up and down team. And I mean, they played well down the stretch here, 7-3 in their last 10 games. So they've played 12 so far, and out of the last 10, they've looked okay. 5-1 at home. They've struggled a bit on the road, though, and that's what concerns you at this part of the season. We're getting to that part where it's like, hey, the final stretch of these first 20 games, it's time to step up on the road. Luckily, they get this one at home, and I think that's where you got to bring some confidence into them. But you do have this Nuggets team that is equally as hot, man. They have been on fire in these last 5 games. I mean, 5 straight wins, and no Joe Schmoes they beat against. Granted, Trailblazers and the Pacers and the Rockets aren't having great seasons, but they all have good players. But the Heat and the Hawks, 2 teams they beat handedly on back-to-back in just last week on Monday and Friday. And not to mention last night, they absolutely destroyed the Trailblazers. You guys both picked them in our picks on the show last Friday.
Yeah.
I'm the only one that took the Nuggets. This team is on fire, and they're sitting hot in third place. And this is an offense that I question their ability to really be stopped. But on the road, they have a losing record. They're 2-3 on the road. Both teams 7-3 in the last 10. But I want to know if this Denver Nuggets team can play well on the road, because before that game, pardon me, you look back their last 3 road games, it's a 2-point win against the Timberwolves, then they lose back-to-back against the Grizzlies to start out the month. So they're definitely on a stretch where they need to figure something out once they leave their home stadium. So that's why I'm going to go with the Dallas Mavericks in this one. But I want to see this Nuggets team do something here productive on the road.
Yeah, and I think with Dallas too, it's since that loss they had against the Bulls, they've won 4 of the last 5. So they've rebounded from that loss, and I think they're waiting. We've been waiting since this trade happened with Porzingis. We've been waiting for him and Doncic to really click and get a good stretch of basketball going between the two and the team overall. But I think tonight they find a way to get that. And I'm with you, Alek. I think I'm going to go with Dallas tonight.
Like you said, Denver has had that hot streak, the past couple of games. They've won, what'd you say, 4 in a row now?
Yep.
Or 5?
4 of the last 5.
4 of the last 5. They're on a hot streak, but like you said, they're not very good on the road. And, Doncic is Doncic in Dallas. You don't mess around with Luka Doncic in Dallas. And I think that's probably why I'm going to go Dallas here. I got the Mavericks.
Oh boy, well, that means the Nuggets are probably going to win. We pretty much sucked last week when it came to NBA predictions. We didn't have one where we all got the same one. Oh, dude, you're telling me I had one correct. Mike, you had 2 correct in hockey last week. You went 2 for 4. Both Matt and I went 1 and 3. So yeah, you're doing a little bit better at the moment than the rest of us. But
I guess I'll take that. Matt, go better. But...
just one thing, Matt, you were great in college basketball last week. You got 1 game wrong out of the 8 that we
really.
Did, so yeah,
who was it?
Florida versus Florida State. Florida pulled a huge upset over them. So congratulations there. Somehow that game went completely the other way that everybody was saying.
This close going undefeated, Matt.
Yep. Well,
that would have been something. I don't know if we've done that yet, or one of us has done that.
No, none of us have had a perfect week on any sport. So any sport that we picked more than 1 or 2 games. So
that'd be a beast of the week.
Next NBA game on our slate, though. Chicago Bulls, Los Angeles Lakers tonight. It's a late game. LeBron James day-to-day might return. It'll depend on how he feels pregame. But this is a team in Los Angeles. They're actually stepping up recently. They've had, a couple good games here and there. They're still having a couple slip-ups, 6-4 in their last 10. But at home, they've been playing really good. And this one for them, unfortunately, is at home. And they're going to come in against a fierce Chicago Bulls squad who has been pretty phenomenal as of late, besides that Warriors game. They're 6-4 in their last 10. But, they've been pretty even on their home and away splits. They seem to be scoring well. They have one of the best scoring duos in the country right now. So they continue just to roll right along. Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan have been absolutely dominating everyone. So I'm excited to see this. If LeBron James plays, it'll be a real testament to what this Lakers squad can do going up against what looks like a legitimized Bulls.
Is his status questionable, Alek? Or do we not?
It's still day to day. It's okay. Going to depend whether or not the team feels he's ready to go right before the game.
DeMar DeRozan, okay, a lot of people are starting to forget now that he even played for the Spurs. He wasn't even big for the Spurs, okay? Now he's cementing himself like he was in Toronto. This guy is cementing himself as the leader of this squad, okay? Putting up 35 points this last game against the Clippers. That is insane, okay? And then you have Zach LaVine putting up 29 points. Okay, yeah, you're winning games if both of those guys are scoring that many points. Okay, that's insane. And then I like the play of Caruso too. Only 7 points, but 5 assists. I like talking about assists, but
hey, sister, big part of basketball. Remember, Caruso plays big in LA.
Yeah, he does. So, and that's why I'm bringing him up, because he's coming back to play, his old team. I think he's going to play extra hard. If we're making picks, I got to go Bulls.
That's probably the safe pick here, especially if LeBron James can't play. We haven't seen Anthony Davis really be that guy. Everyone wants to, everyone for the past few years been saying, oh, AD, he's right up there with Giannis. He's one of those best big men. And I've kind of said it the last 2 years. He feels weak in the paint. He never wants to take that next step and become that physical force. He'll get a cool, put back slam. He'll look real tough once or twice a game. But there's just too many times he plays passive. And it's kind of what I've said about LeBron the past few seasons as he's been getting older. He just becomes too pass heavy, and he really goes away from what made LeBron the greatest player in his generation was his ability to attack the basket. Obviously, as he's gotten older, he's gone away from that to try and keep his body healthy, and it might not be working the best way since he seems to be getting out every single year with an injury at this point. But Anthony Davis should be that guy making that next step and making that step into the paint on the drives, playing physical basketball down low. And if LeBron can't go tonight, it's going to be up to Anthony Davis to carry the rock. And we know he can obviously score the ball very well, very efficiently, but he just doesn't play the game like he looks like a top 5 player. And this is going to be a game against a good squad. He's going to have to show out or they're going to get run out of their own arena.
Yeah, and Alek, I know he was injured last year in the playoffs too, partially, but this is our knock against Anthony Davis. I'm not going to say he doesn't step up, but he doesn't do it consistently. And to flip sides here, Matt, you were talking about Caruso. It's, I know he likes playing in LA, and I know he's probably happy where he's at now because he's on a good team. But normally when you leave a team, you go back to play them on their court. It's like sometimes they try to do too much, and I don't really see Caruso doing that tonight when he comes off the bench. It's because that's his game, is doing a lot. It's playing passing lanes. It's getting.
He didn't come off the bench the last game though. He started. So
yeah, well, whatever role they use him in tonight, it's that's his game, is playing the passing lanes and getting key layups and moving the ball around. So I don't see him doing that too much tonight, but he might want to try to show up his team. And I'm with you, Matt, too. I'm going with the Bulls in this one.
Yeah.
Well, I want to go the Bulls here as well, but there's just one thing when we all pick across the board. It doesn't tend to be great things, but I'm going to go with it again here. I'm going to take the Bulls. We went across the board for the Mavericks. We're going to do the same here for the Bulls, and it's just one of those games. If LeBron plays, I say the Lakers have their best chance, but if it's no LeBron, then there's no win in Los Angeles this week. And next game, let's transfer into some college football. The Iowa Hawkeyes back in the winning column now 2 straight as they knock off a ranked Minnesota Golden Gophers squad in a crucial victory for the Big Ten West, 27-22. They make a big fourth quarter stand there. They get 10 points and put themselves ahead just enough. And now they're right there behind Wisconsin, tied for first place. And the one thing holding Wisconsin over is the tiebreaker win back on October 30th. If Wisconsin slips up and Iowa wins out, which looks like they can with Illinois and Nebraska coming up on the schedule, if this Iowa team can get back into the Big Ten championship, especially miss Wisconsin, they're going to have Minnesota in that final week. This is obviously a very difficult Minnesota squad. Wisconsin got Nebraska, though, upcoming this weekend. So this was a big game this past weekend. I loved Iowa's play. They finally looked like they had some sort of offense. The defense continued to play well. They held Tanner Morgan to under 50% completion. Padilla didn't play any greater for Iowa, but they made the quarterback change, try to get something going. He gets 2 touchdowns on 200 yards. Charlie Jones, 106 yards for the Hawkeyes. And the defense, they were just playing lights out. Jack Campbell, 6 tackles, 11 assisted as well. He was on the money, getting back there, and really held the Golden Gophers both to sink.
Yeah.
What are your guys' thoughts?
You got something, Matt?
Mike, you go ahead and go first.
I mean, yeah, this is a big win for Iowa, Alek. Like you said, it's big in deciding that side of the Big Ten West, because we really don't know who's going to come out of it. And it was good to see Iowa's offense play somewhat better, because that's what we criticize them about, or not. I don't want to say criticize, but that's not who they are. They're known for the defense, and they found a way to win a close game. They had to win it with defense and offense, and like I said, it's a big win for that side of the Big Ten.
Yeah, that it is. I mean, Minnesota staying in the fight, but I mean, this Minnesota team has always been scrappy. Though I remember talking about it with Alek. I mean, you have these teams. You have your Minnesota and your Purdue, and you can even throw in maybe a Northwestern at sometimes, even Wisconsin. These are the teams that they have that 6-4 type of record, but they're heavily unfavored, but they come into these games like, hey, we're heavily unfavored. We're going to come out and play the game of our lives, especially in these huge games. And Minnesota did that. Even though they lost, they really took it to this Iowa team who has been – I mean, Iowa was ranked number 2 at one point. Now they're ranked number 20. So, I mean, I know they pull out the win, but they have definitely fallen off this year. So – we'll see what they can do.
Now they have, Matt. And it's at this point, if they want to get to where they move up a little bit in the rankings, get a decent bowl game, a good bowl game, this is one they had to have. It's Minnesota is still a tough team to play as well. And like you said, with you could probably say the Big Ten West. It's probably the style of play. It might be a little tougher than the Big Ten East. It's just different.
Yeah, and then, right now the Big Ten West is completely wide open, even for Minnesota and Purdue, both teams at 4-3. And you look, if Minnesota wins out, they'll obviously get a win over Wisconsin, which would put them at a 6-3 potentially. So Minnesota would have the tiebreaker win over Wisconsin. If Iowa loses these final two games, which doesn't look like it will, it can open the door for both Minnesota and Purdue to slip up into that spot for the Big Ten West. So it's very wide open right now for the Big Ten West. East, it looks like it's closing up very quickly. We'll see if Ohio State beats Michigan State here this weekend and then goes on to beat Michigan. Obviously, they'll be in it, but it's going to be tough, and it's going to be up to the teams up north to stop Ohio State from, once again, just dominating the Big Ten East and making it to what would it be, their fifth straight or sixth straight Big Ten championship game. So they have been phenomenal. Someone's going to have to step up in the Big Ten if they want anything to change here very shortly. But, speaking of this Big Ten East, and we talk about it a lot here on the show, but this is one of the most dominating units. And I really liked the acquisition of Mel Tucker here to Michigan State. I didn't love it when they made it. I didn't love it before this season. I didn't love it last year. I didn't love it when he was at Colorado. But there is a fit here. And the one thing that's gotten on my mind is this guy was a coach in SEC football, Alabama. That's where he was, right? You saw what happened when the SEC first got brought to the Big Ten with Urban Meyer a couple seasons ago. It turned Ohio State from being a great team that was right up there in the likes of Michigan and Michigan State, Wisconsin, and Penn State, and it turned them into the powerhouse that has dominated the Big Ten over the last decade and a half now. Last decade, and bringing Mel Tucker in, obviously not the level of Urban Meyer, but he's one of those guys that has completely turned the tables around and made this Michigan State team, in my opinion, better than it probably ever was under Mark D'Antonio.
Yeah,
and they had good teams then too, Matt.
They had great teams with D'Antonio. They had that one Big Ten. I know they made the playoff that one year. They got beaten pretty bad in that playoff. I think it was by Clemson. But, that was the year they won the Big Ten title. They beat Ohio State. But, I even think that they're better than that team. So
yeah, all right. Well, we got to move on here. Next game on our slate, number 15, Ole Miss Rebels. They continue to roll now, second place of the SEC West with a win over the 11th ranked Texas A&M Aggies, 29-19 this past weekend. It was a great game. They really held Calzada. He didn't get a touchdown. He had the yards, but he threw 2 interceptions and really took the game away from Devin Akane, who had 110 yards and 2 touchdowns on just 12 carries. Jurion Ely, though, 152 on the other side for Ole Miss. The Rebels continue to roll. They'll probably get right back up there into the top 15 as they were sitting at 16 going into this week. But it leaves the door now open for the SEC West. If Alabama slips up one more, it'll take 2 more times since Alabama holds the tiebreaker. But, Alabama has a tough matchup against Auburn that final week. And if Bo Nix shows up to play there, it could be a big upset for the SEC West.
That's the week
it does look like that Alabama should take it, but Ole Miss at least put them in this chance to control their own destiny down the stretch and close out the season and at least give themselves the opportunity with Vanderbilt and Miss State up on the schedule.
Go ahead, Mike.
This game was surprising the way, they kind of played the way that we thought they were, Alek. I know we talked about A&M being overrated, and we gave them their credit when they got to where I think they were 11th going into this game. But I heard on the broadcast when I was listening to, I think Herb Street said it, we were waiting after that first quarter for them to get something going offensively. We know Jimbo Fisher. He knows big games. He knows how to make adjustments, and it just didn't really happen. And, give credit to Ole Miss. They had some hard times earlier. They lost some games in some other weeks that they had, and they found a way to win a big game like this. And it was a big game. It was a top 15 matchup, I believe it was.
Top 25, Ole Miss ranked at 16 going in.
Okay.
Ranked at 15 and A&M at 11. So it was a big matchup for the SEC. And, we did give A&M their credit, but I think they just proved exactly what we had said up until that moment last week. Hey, this team was overrated. They show it once again, not being able to show up in big games. AP poll had Ole Miss ranked at 10th and A&M at 16th, and that ranking feels a lot more accurate than what the College Football Committee put out. So we'll have to see how this affects it. The upcoming rankings this Tuesday at 8 p.m. on ESPN. But Ole Miss, they have something good going. We'll get to see if they can finish it out. Next game I want to go to, number 12, Wake Forest, barely scraping by. They lose to UNC last week. Now they just get past number 16 ranked NC State this week, 45-42, put themselves now one win away from clinching a spot in the ACC championship, but they do have Clemson coming up this weekend, and it's gonna be a huge matchup. And I can't wait for that one. But you look at this Wake Forest squad in this football game, they were dominant. Sam Hartman continues to play great. This wasn't his best game, but they were able to pull it out in the end. He has 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, just over 50% completion. And on the other side, Devin Leary, he was fantastic, 400 yards with 4 touchdowns. He also had 2 interceptions. And for some reason, Wake Forest's biggest problem apparently is taking on a team from North Carolina. But you preview this upcoming game against Clemson now next week that we're going to talk about later here on the show. If Clemson can pull this off, let me take a look at the standings here.
This should be a ranked matchup.
Clemson pulls this off and Wake Forest lose that final week against Boston College, Clemson goes into the ACC championship to, I believe, take on Pitt so long as they don't pit it up.
Yeah, and this should be a ranked matchup. I mean, Clemson,
hopefully it will be
past week. Yeah, and that will make the tensions even more, tense.
Palpable.
Yeah, so this is going to be a pretty good game, and I think Clemson can take it to them, too. I mean, yes, they have had some, ups and downs over the season. They lost to NC State. They've lost to Pitt already, but they have shown that they are still contending, okay? They're in a rebuild season. They lost Trevor Lawrence, okay? That guy was the backbone of their program, and he went first overall, so they have to try and find some guys to, fit that spot, whether it's DJ or, receivers around him or even a running back, because they did lose ETN as well. So, but I think that this is really what shows how good of a coach Dabo Swinney really is. And much as I really don't like to say that, I can't stand Dabo Swinney, but I mean, to coach a team that has lost their top 2 guys in the ETN and Trevor Lawrence, and they're what, 7-3 right now or 8-3 now?
Matt, they sit at 7-3, yeah, 5-0 at home as well, and this game is played in Clemson.
I mean, this is going to be the game, and
they get up for big games.
They have offense, but they don't have that defense. Okay, and they barely scraped their way against NC State and Clemson.
Not to mention this Wake Forest team allowed 56 points to Army.
Yeah.
70-56 that game.
Clemson has a very productive defense. They've always had. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you look at their defense; they're hardly allowing more than 20 points per game, really at all throughout this season. So Clemson, they've played fantastic at home. Obviously, they don't have the big wins. They lost to Pitt. They beat Boston College. It was a close overtime game against NC State. In the first half of the season, they were falling apart. But since then, I mean, this team's on the 3-game win streak, and they played great at home. And this game being in Clemson coming up here, it's going to be an important one. I think for Wake Forest is it's not necessarily about winning this one. It's about beating Boston College. That's the one win they need to secure their spot in the ACC championship. If they beat Clemson this week, it'll be already secured, putting Clemson down at 3 losses, and they could only finish with 1 loss in the ACC. Yeah. But Wake Forest, they're at a spot that they need to be careful that they don't slip up and drop both of these games and really screw the pooch in the end of this season. But Wake Forest, they've been fantastic a lot of this season, and they've played great, but they're going to have to play their very best football, especially if they want to get to the ACC championship and then get it past Pitt.
Yeah, and Wake Forest has to be careful because the game against North Carolina, they lost, and it was a high-scoring game. This one was a shootout as well. So they've shown they could score points, but their defense has been a little shaky the last 2 weeks. And although you're going to have to score you won't have to score as much. I mean, we don't know, but you want to score as much against Clemson based on what we've seen from them this year, because their offense hasn't shown they can compete with some teams. They've been in close games and been able to win and make some extra plays, but their offense isn't what it used to be. But like you said, Alek, they have to be careful because this Clemson game coming up, and I know we'll talk about it more later in the week, but you said they play good at home, and they do, and their fans come up for big games, and this is a big game, and it could potentially be a ranked matchup. So they have to be careful.
That's just it too. And I think the one thing maybe this does, though, for Wake Forest, they'll get another ranked win under their belt if they can beat Clemson this weekend. They'll get a decent Boston College next week, who's having a down season, but they have some good players. And then after that, they can get a top 25 win again against Pitt in the ACC championship. I think it reopens the door for the ACC to get a team back into the college football playoff if Wake Forest dominates here in these last 3 games, because they're the ACC's only chance.
It is. It's honestly, it's their highest ranked team right now, isn't it?
Yep.
So
they want to let's go ahead here. Move on. Next game, number 22, San Diego State. The Aztecs took down the 7-3 Nevada Wolfpack on Saturday, 23-21. They sit pretty atop the Mountain West Division, the Mountain West Division, with 2 games left in the season. They clinch with either a Fresno State loss or by winning out. They sit at 9-1 right now. They're looking fantastic. They have UNLV and then Boise State to finish out the season, so they can at least get to 10 wins and probably can find it up to 11. So long as they don't show the same slip up they did against that Fresno State team. But just remember, San Diego State has been playing close all season long. I mean, you saw a 2-point win in overtime against Utah. They win by just 6 points against San Jose State, 6 points against a good Air Force team. They lose by 10 to Fresno. They beat Hawaii by 7. They beat Nevada by 2. Everything has been close, and it's coming down to being close here for the Mountain West as well. But what a big season this could be for the Aztecs if they can once again clinch their spot into the Mountain West Conference Championship, and most likely the moment they take on Utah State, so long as State doesn't get upset down the stretch here against Wyoming and New Mexico.
Yeah, but I mean, this was a pretty good game. Good job by the Aztecs. Pulling off this win. They've been a team that's been up and coming for the past couple of seasons, and I think this is finally a cement in their productiveness. So hats off to them. Good productive win. Good productive win.
Yeah, and they have UNLV coming up next week, and UNLV stinks. We'll be honest.
Yeah.
You still have to be careful. Yeah, and
he's not even playing.
Exactly, yeah, Matt. That's my point. That's why they stink.
Bringing that up.
But yeah, you have to be careful still. I mean, it's still a football team you're playing. You still have to be careful. And I mean, I know we talked about Boise State. They've been a letdown this year, but you still have to be careful against them too. So it's still 2 games they have to watch out for as they want to finish out. And I mean, I'm with you, Matt. They've had a good year, and I'm happy for them.
Yeah, 100%. They're going to need a strong finish, and I think they have what it takes. It's just a question of putting it together down the stretch. Before we end out the show, current leaders for the American Athletic Conference: Houston in first place, Cincinnati actually in second so far in the ACC, Wake Forest in front with the Atlantic, Pitt in front of the ACC, Coastal in the Big 12, Oklahoma and Oklahoma State right up there tied for first with Baylor on the coattails at 5-2. Big 10 East in charge, Ohio State, Wisconsin, in charge of the Big 10 West. For the Conference USA, Western Kentucky leads against UTSA in the Conference USA West. In the MAC West, Northern Illinois at 7-3 overall, 5-1 in conference. Kent State, they got a big game against their rival Akron this weekend. We'll talk about that later on the show. They sit in first place at their side of the MAC. Mountain West, obviously in control with San Diego State, Utah State in the mountain side. Pac-12 North, Oregon's taken away the championship once again. Pac-12 South looks like it'll be a matchup against Utah in their championship. SEC Georgia is the front runner for the SEC East, and they have clinched it. Alabama is close to clinching the SEC West. In the Sun Belt, App State leads their side against the Raging Cajuns on the other. That is the total rundown so far. And Matt, that leaves us one final segment on the show here. This week's Beast of the Week, baby.
All right. Now, I just thought of this before the show. Okay, this week's Beast of the Week, I got to give it to the performance. I mean, it wasn't the best performance, but Mark Ingram, 14 carries, 47 yards. That's not too bad, but that was enough to put him in the leaderboard as the all-time leader for the Saints rushing. He passed – who did he pass? He passed Deuce McAllister's franchise record. He now has 6,143 yards with New Orleans. If you remember, he spent most of his career with New Orleans before going off to Baltimore. But that's my Beast of the Week. Mark Ingram, hats off to him. He is now the all-time leader for the Saints. So that's cool.
Yeah, and I know we mentioned that last Friday just before that game that he was, just 20 yards behind McAllister, and he's able to pull it off. And what a big moment for his career. Just all hats off there. But we got basketball on next on YSNLive.com. Make sure to tune in there. That does it for the Casual Sports Podcast. Come on back tomorrow, 2 to 3 p.m. for more of these guys. We'll see you then.